He said, "Stop acting like we're married. You don't get a say in where I go or who I'm with." His buddies all laughed and slapped him on the back. I just smiled sweetly and kept stirring my homemade chili. But when he came back from his weekend boys' trip to Vegas, his Xbox didn't work. And his best friend told him exactly why. My boyfriend Brandon and I have a fundamental disagreement about the nature of reality. I believe that if you sleep in someone's bed, eat their home-cooked meals, and have your mail delivered to their address, you're in a committed relationship. Brandon believes he's a free-spirited bachelor and I'm just some woman who happens to share his living space. We've been together for 3 years, and for the last 8 months, he's been living in my townhouse. My name is on the mortgage, my name is on all the utilities, and my name is on the little welcome mat that says the Johnsons, which I bought in a moment of hopeful delusion that now seems embarrassingly premature. I'm pretty independent by nature. I love my quiet life working as a freelance marketing consultant for my home office. I have a close-knit group of girlfriends, and my idea of a perfect Saturday night is making homemade pasta while watching true crime documentaries. Brandon is not like that at all. His life revolves around his college fraternity brothers, a group of overgrown man-children I privately call the Lost Boys. Their names are Kyle, Hunter, and the third one whose name I can never remember. Let's call him Chad. They act like they're still pledging Sigma Chi instead of pushing 30 with receding hairlines and beer guts. The breaking point came last Thursday evening. I was in the kitchen making my grandmother's famous 3-bean chili recipe when Brandon strutted in, phone glued to his ear, already changed into his going-out clothes, that obnoxious vintage Lakers jersey and those overpriced sneakers he treats like crown jewels. He was in the middle of a loud, animated conversation with the Lost Boys, completely ignoring me as I stood there in MY kitchen, in MY house. "Dude, absolutely," he practically shouted into the phone. "Vegas, baby. What happens there stays there, am I right?" He laughed that obnoxious laugh he reserves for impressing his friends. "No, Ashley's not coming. Are you kidding me? This is a guy's weekend. No girlfriends allowed." He hung up and turned to me with this smug grin, like he'd just announced he'd won the lottery. "Great news, babe," he said, not even noticing I was stirring chili with enough force to create a small tornado. "The boys and I are hitting Vegas this weekend. Flying out tomorrow morning. Going to live it up like the old days." This was the first I was hearing about any Vegas trip. I took a deep breath and kept my voice calm. "Okay," I said, tasting the chili. "Sounds fun. Which hotel are you guys staying at?" It was a simple question, the kind of question a normal person in a normal relationship might ask their live-in partner. Brandon, however, looked at me like I just asked him to explain cryptocurrency while juggling flaming torches. Brandon let out this condescending chuckle and shook his head like I was being ridiculous. That's when Kyle walked through MY front door without even knocking, followed by Hunter and Chad. They made themselves comfortable in MY living room like they owned the place. "Guys, get this," Brandon called out to his buddies, raising his voice so they could all hear. "Ashley wants to know where we're staying in Vegas. Can you believe that?" The Lost Boys erupted in laughter. Kyle, the ringleader with his perfectly groomed beard and craft beer obsession, looked me up and down like I was a clingy ex-girlfriend who just wouldn't take a hint. "Bro, that's what I'm talking about," Kyle said, shaking his head dramatically. "This is exactly why I stay single. Can't handle the ball and chain, you know what I mean." Hunter, who still dresses like he's going to a rave circa 2015, chimed in with his nasally voice, "For real, man. Independence is everything. You can't let anyone control your life." That's when Brandon turned back to me, put his hands on his hips like some sort of discount superhero, and delivered the line that would change everything. "Look, Ashley," he said, his voice dripping with fake patience, "you need to stop acting like we're married. You don't get a say in where I go or who I'm with. We're just dating, okay? Chill out." The Lost Boys absolutely lost their minds. They were high-fiving, whooping, and carrying on like Brandon had just delivered the greatest comeback in human history. A woman in her own home being told she has no right to ask basic questions about her live-in boyfriend's travel plans. Absolutely hilarious, apparently. I stood there holding my wooden spoon, chili dripping onto my hardwood floors that I pay to maintain, in my house that I pay the mortgage on, listening to 4 grown men laugh at me like I was the punchline to some cruel joke. And something inside me snapped. Not in an angry, screaming way. In a cold, calculating way. The part of my brain that had been making excuses for Brandon's behavior, that had been hoping he'd grow up and commit, that had been playing house like we were a real couple, that part just packed up its bags, walked out the door, and never looked back. I looked at Brandon's smug, self-satisfied face, and I felt this strange calm wash over me. A smile spread across my lips, not a hurt smile, not a fake smile, but a genuine smile of someone who just had a moment of perfect clarity. "You know what, Brandon?" I said, my voice bright and cheerful. "You are absolutely right. My mistake completely." They all laughed even harder, thinking I was backing down like some defeated puppy. Brandon actually patted me on the head, literally patted me on the head like I was a confused child who finally understood basic math. Then they all grabbed their overnight bags and headed for the door, off to pregame at some sports bar before their flight. "Don't wait up, babe," Brandon called over his shoulder as they piled into Kyle's Jeep Wrangler that he's still making payments on. I stood in my doorway, watching them drive away, still holding that wooden spoon. The neighborhood was quiet except for the sound of Mrs. Rodriguez watering her garden next door. "Okay," I said out loud to myself, a delicious plan already forming in my mind. "Not married. No say. Got it." This weekend was going to be interesting after all. The moment Brandon's testosterone parade disappeared down Maple Street on Friday morning, I went into full strategic mode. My first move wasn't crying or stress-eating ice cream like they probably expected. It was building the perfect alliance. I walked next door to Mrs. Rodriguez's house. Carmen Rodriguez is a 75-year-old retired school principal with a green thumb, a sharp wit, and an information network that puts the neighborhood Facebook group to shame. Nothing happens on our street without her knowing about it, analyzing it, and having opinions about it. I brought her a container of my 3-bean chili and sat with her on her gorgeous wraparound porch, surrounded by her prize-winning petunias. "Carmen," I said after we discussed the weather and the ongoing saga of the Johnson family's landscaping choices, "I need your help with something. It involves a little bit of acting." Her eyes absolutely lit up. Carmen had been the drama teacher at Roosevelt High School for 30 years before becoming principal. The woman lives for theatrical moments. I told her everything. Brandon's exact words. The way his friends had laughed. The head pat. I didn't need to embellish anything, the raw truth was insulting enough. By the time I finished, Carmen was gripping her iced tea glass so hard I thought it might shatter. "That disrespectful little punk," she declared, her teacher voice coming out in full force. "Don't you worry, Mija. You just tell me what you need me to do." I explained my plan. When Brandon inevitably came home and found himself locked out, she was to act confused and deliver some very specific information. Carmen took notes like she was preparing for the performance of a lifetime. "This is going to be better than the time I directed Steel Magnolias," she said, practically rubbing her hands together with glee. With my accomplice secured, I returned home to begin what I dubbed Operation Fresh Start. My townhouse had been slowly invaded over the past 8 months. Brandon's oversized gaming chair dominated my living room. His collection of action figures cluttered my bookshelves. His protein powder and supplement collection had taken over half my kitchen counter. His clothes mixed with mine in the closet I used to love. It was time for a complete reset. I didn't just pack his stuff, I organized it with military precision. I bought a dozen boxes from the moving supply store and labeled them with my finest penmanship. The first box, workout clothes that smell like a gym locker. The second, vintage jerseys worth more than my car payment. The third, and my personal favorite, action figures for the man-child who lives in my house rent-free. His mountain of gaming equipment went into boxes labeled electronics for someone who doesn't pay electricity bills, and cables that apparently cost more than actual gold. By Saturday afternoon, every trace of Brandon's physical presence was boxed and ready for transport. I hired 2 college kids from TaskRabbit, and we loaded everything into a climate-controlled storage unit across town. I paid for 3 months up front, generous, considering he'd never paid me a dime for rent, groceries, or utilities. With the townhouse cleared of his belongings, the real transformation began. I went on the shopping spree I'd been dreaming about for months. Out went his ugly gaming chair, replaced by a beautiful cream-colored reading chair and matching ottoman. I bought plants, lots of plants, and filled my space with life and color. I rearranged my furniture back to the way I actually liked it. The bedroom was next. Down came his collection of motivational gym posters, pain is weakness leaving the body seriously, replaced by the watercolor paintings I'd been wanting to hang. I bought new sheets, new pillows, and reclaimed my space. My final and most brilliant stroke of genius happened Saturday evening. I was at Target buying organizational supplies when I wandered into the pet section. 2 hours later, I was at the county animal shelter. An hour after that, I came home with Luna, a 2-year-old golden retriever mix with soulful brown eyes and the sweetest temperament. Luna immediately claimed the sunny spot by the window and fell asleep like she'd always lived there. The house was transformed. It was no longer Brandon's crash pad with my name on the mortgage. It was my home again. Sunday evening at 8:47 p.m., my Ring doorbell sent a notification to my phone. There he was, Brandon, rolling his little wheeled suitcase up my walkway, looking tan and probably hungover from his Vegas adventure. He was humming something under his breath, probably replaying his weekend highlights. The entertainment began immediately. He tried his key. It slid into the lock but wouldn't turn. I'd had the locks changed that morning, best $200 I ever spent. He jiggled the key, looking mildly annoyed, like this was just a minor inconvenience. He tried again. Then he let out this exaggerated sigh and started pounding on my door. From her spot on the couch, Luna lifted her head, gave a curious little woof, and then settled back down to continue gnawing on her new rope toy. Brandon started calling my phone. I watched it light up on my coffee table, took a leisurely sip of my wine, and hit decline. He called again, declined. This cycle repeated 7 times, each call making me feel more empowered. The pounding got louder and more frantic. Ashley. Come on, open the door. What's wrong with the lock? My key isn't working. I remained perfectly silent. This was all part of the show. After 10 minutes of increasingly desperate banging, he seemed to give up. Through the doorbell camera, I watched him pace on my porch, running his hands through his hair, checking his phone, looking genuinely confused. That's when Carmen's porch light clicked on next door. Showtime. Oh my goodness, Brandon, is that you? Carmen called out, appearing in her doorway in her robe and slippers, holding a cup of tea. Her acting was flawless, the perfect blend of surprise and neighborly concern. Mrs. Rodriguez, thank God, Brandon said, jogging over to the edge of my porch. I can't get in. My key isn't working, and Ashley's not answering her phone. Is she home? I can see lights on. Oh yes, Ashley's home, Carmen said, nodding thoughtfully. She's had such a wonderful weekend. A real transformation, actually. Transformation? What are you talking about? Carmen leaned against her doorframe, settling in for her Oscar-worthy performance. Well, she told me the good news, Carmen said conspiratorially. She said you two aren't married, and you don't get a say in each other's lives. So she decided to celebrate her independence. She redecorated the whole house. It's a woman's sanctuary now, she said. Very zen and peaceful. Brandon just stared, his mouth hanging open like a confused fish. And the best part, Carmen continued, barely containing her obvious delight, she got herself a dog. The sweetest golden retriever named Luna. She said she wanted a companion who was loyal and appreciated her cooking. Isn't that wonderful? The look on Brandon's face was priceless, a perfect combination of confusion, disbelief, and dawning horror. He slowly turned and peered through my living room window. I was sitting on my couch with Luna's head in my lap, both of us visible in the warm lamplight. I gave him a little wave and a bright smile. He let out a sound somewhere between a gasp and a whimper. That's when his phone started buzzing with my response. Brandon pulled out his phone with shaking hands and read my carefully crafted message. Hi Brandon. You said to stop acting like we're married and that you don't get a say in my life. You were absolutely right. Since we're just dating and this is my house, I've made some changes. Your belongings are safely stored at Secure Space Storage on Highland Avenue, Unit 247. The access code is 0-8-1-5. I paid for 3 months. Thanks for helping me realize what I really wanted. 2 hearts. I watched through the doorbell camera as he read it once, then twice, then a 3rd time. His face went through about 17 different expressions, finally landing on pure panic. He immediately started typing furiously. My phone exploded with a series of increasingly frantic messages. Ashley, what the hell? You can't just lock me out of my place. Where am I supposed to sleep tonight? This is insane, you can't do this. I live here. Answer your phone right now. I let him send about 15 messages before responding with, your place? I have the mortgage papers that say otherwise. You told me yourself, we're not married, so you don't get a say in my home. I'm just taking your advice. Smiling face with smiling eyes. His response was immediate, this is different and you know it. Let me in so we can talk like adults. My reply, adults? Like when you and your friends laughed at me in my own kitchen. Or when you patted me on the head like a confused puppy. I think we talked enough. Enjoy your independence. Party popper. That's when Brandon completely lost it. He started banging on my door again, this time with both fists, shouting loud enough to wake the entire neighborhood. Ashley, open this door right now. You can't do this to me. Luna started barking, not aggressive barking, more like, hey mom, there's a weird man having a breakdown on our porch barking. Carmen, still playing her role perfectly, called out from her doorway, Brandon honey, you're going to wake the whole street. Maybe you should call one of your friends to pick you up. I don't understand, he yelled, his voice cracking like a teenager going through puberty. We've been together 3 years. You can't just throw me out. Oh my, Carmen said, looking genuinely confused now. But didn't you tell her she doesn't get a say in your life? She said you made it very clear that you're not married. I think she's just respecting your boundaries, dear. That's when Brandon threw his phone at my door. It bounced off and skittered across the porch, the screen cracking on the concrete. He stood there for a moment, breathing heavily, staring at his broken phone like he couldn't believe what he'd done. Then he sat down on my porch steps and put his head in his hands. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered the laughter, the head pat, the way he dismissed me like I was some clingy stranger instead of the woman who'd been supporting him for 8 months. After about 10 minutes of sitting there looking pathetic, Kyle's Jeep pulled up. Brandon must have called him from someone else's phone. I watched Kyle get out, looking annoyed and confused. Dude, what's going on? Why are you sitting on her porch like a lost dog? Brandon explained the situation while Kyle shook his head and looked back at my house like it was harboring a dangerous criminal. That's insane, man, Kyle said. She can't just kick you out. That's like, illegal or something. They spent another few minutes plotting and complaining before Kyle finally convinced Brandon to get in the Jeep. As they drove away, Brandon turned around in the passenger seat to stare at my house one more time. Through the window, he could see me and Luna curled up together on the couch, looking perfectly content. I waved goodbye. The next morning, I woke up to Luna's gentle nudging and the most peaceful silence I'd experienced in months. No alarm clock blaring sports radio, no protein shaker bottles rattling in the kitchen, no video game explosions coming from the living room. Just birdsong and the soft sound of Luna's tail wagging against my nightstand. After a lovely breakfast of avocado toast, which Brandon always claimed was hipster nonsense, I checked my phone to find 17 missed calls from an unknown number and a string of voicemails that gradually devolved from angry to pleading to desperate. But the real entertainment came from social media. Brandon had apparently spent his night at Kyle's apartment crafting what could only be described as a masterpiece of victimhood. His Instagram story was a series of posts with dramatic black and white photos and captions like, when someone shows their true colors, and sometimes the person you trust most is the one who betrays you. The Lost Boys had rallied around him with comments like stay strong brother, and you dodged a bullet, and crazy women be crazy. I screenshotted everything for my own amusement and then decided to give the story some much-needed context. I didn't post anything immediately. Instead, I spent Monday morning working peacefully in my home office with Luna napping at my feet. Around lunchtime, my doorbell rang. It was a man in a cheap suit holding a manila envelope, Brandon's lawyer, apparently. He handed me papers with all the dramatic flair of someone serving a celebrity with divorce papers. The letter was beautiful in its complete lack of legal understanding. Brandon was demanding immediate access to his primary residence, return of his wrongfully seized property, and compensation for emotional distress and unlawful eviction. I called my lawyer, Sarah Chun, who'd handled my mortgage paperwork. After she stopped laughing, she crafted a response that was both professional and devastating. Sarah's letter included copies of my mortgage documents, utility bills, and lease agreement, which had only ever had my name on it, along with an itemized list of expenses Brandon had never contributed to: rent equivalent, $1,800 per month times 8 months, utilities, $150 per month times 8 months, groceries, approximately $400 per month times 8 months, and various household expenses. The total came to over $18,000. Sarah's letter politely inquired whether Brandon would be submitting payment for his 8-month residence in my home, or if we should consider his belongings fair compensation for services rendered. We never heard from Brandon's lawyer again. That evening, I decided it was time to tell my side of the story. I crafted a single Instagram post with 3 photos. The first was a before picture of my living room from 2 months ago, Brandon's gaming chair dominating the space, his clutter everywhere, my own furniture pushed to the corners. The second photo was my living room now, bright, airy, organized, with Luna sleeping peacefully in a patch of sunlight. The third photo was a selfie of me and Luna on our morning walk, both of us looking genuinely happy. The caption was simple and factual. Sometimes life gives you exactly what you need to hear. When someone tells you they don't want to be treated like a partner, believe them. When they tell you that you don't get a say in their life, accept that you also don't have to give them a say in yours. Grateful for clarity, and for this sweet girl who actually appreciates a home-cooked meal. #new beginnings, #authentic living, #rescue dog Soph Instagram. The post was nuclear. My friends, our mutual friends, finally understood what had really happened. The comments poured in, finally. You're glowing. Brandon never deserved you. Luna is perfect. Even better, people started sharing their own stories about Brandon's behavior at parties, his wandering eye, his constant complaints about ball and chain girlfriends. The narrative flipped completely. 3 months later, I was at the farmer's market with Luna when I spotted a familiar figure by the organic honey stand. It was Hunter, looking uncomfortable and avoiding eye contact. But then he surprised me by walking over. "Hey Ashley," he said, shuffling his feet like a guilty teenager. I wanted to apologize. About that night at your place. We were way out of line." I shrugged, scratching Luna behind the ears. Brandon said what he meant. I just took him at his word. "Yeah, I know," Hunter said, shaking his head. "He's been crashing at different people's places ever since. He called me last week complaining that his mom is making him get a real job instead of doing those random freelance gig things. Blamed you for ruining his life." He paused, watching Luna expertly charm a toddler into sharing his dropped pretzel. "Honestly though, you look really happy. And Brandon, well, he's still the same guy who thinks the world owes him something." He was right. I was happy, genuinely, authentically happy in a way I hadn't been in years. My house was truly my sanctuary now. I'd turned Brandon's former gaming room into a beautiful office space with built-in bookshelves and a reading nook. My kitchen was organized exactly how I liked it. My living room was filled with plants and natural light and the sweet sound of Luna's contented sighs. I'd started dating again, but casually, on my own terms. I'd joined a hiking group and made new friends. I'd begun working on a novel I'd put aside when Brandon moved in and monopolized my creative energy with his constant need for attention and validation. Most importantly, I'd learned to trust my instincts again. The final piece of closure came 6 months after Vegas weekend. I was working in my garden when Carmen called me over to the fence between our yards. "Mija, you'll never guess what I heard," she said, her eyes sparkling with gossip. "Brandon's engaged." I looked up from my tomato plants, genuinely surprised. "Really? To who?" "Some girl he met at his cousin's wedding." Kyle's girlfriend told her sister, who told Maria at the grocery store. "Apparently, they've been together 2 months and he proposed last weekend." I felt nothing. Not jealousy, not regret, not even curiosity. Just a mild interest in the information, like hearing about a distant acquaintance's life updates. "Well," I said, returning to my gardening, "I hope she likes sharing her space." Carmen laughed. "That poor girl has no idea what she's getting into." That evening, I sat on my back porch with Luna curled up beside me, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and orange. My phone buzzed with a text from my friend Monica. "Drinks tomorrow night? There's this new wine bar downtown I want to try." I typed back, "Absolutely. Can't wait." As I looked out at my perfectly organized garden, my peaceful home, my sweet dog who never complained about my cooking or dismissed my feelings, I realized something profound. Sometimes the best thing someone can do for you is tell you exactly who they are and what they think of you. Brandon had done me the biggest favor of my life by making it crystal clear that he didn't value me, respect me, or see me as a true partner. His dismissal had set me free to create the life I actually wanted. Not the life I thought I was supposed to want, not the life that looked good on social media, but the authentic, peaceful, joy-filled life that was truly mine. Luna stretched and yawned, then settled her head on my lap with a contented sigh. "What do you think, girl?" I asked, stroking her soft ears. "Ready for tomorrow's adventure?" She wagged her tail in response, and we sat together in perfect, grateful silence as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate or dramatic. Sometimes it's just living well, choosing peace, and refusing to waste another moment on someone who doesn't appreciate the gift of your presence. Brandon had told me I didn't get a say in his life. He was absolutely right. And now, beautifully, he didn't get a say in mine either.